So a massive leak for Battlefield 1 just occurred. I guess that's not as pertinent considering a lot of people have already played the game in some way, shape, or form through the beta, but a lot of the weapons were not included in the beta, and that's still a major part of this first-person shooter. Basically, in this video, I'm going to go through class by class, check out all the different weapons that have been leaked that we didn't see in the beta. Then I'm going to talk about what this means for that class and if it'll change it in any way. This leak came about by a couple of Reddit users, so I'm going to link them in the description down below. I highly recommend you check them out, as there's a good conversation going on there about the impacts this kind of stuff will have and about some of the other stuff that isn't included in my video. But with that, let's start it off with Assault. So a lot of the weapons in the regular game actually are going to have an additional version in this. So take the M19 for example. In the game we did have the light infantry version as well as the trench version. Well, now we're also going to have a factory version in the final game. I'm not going to highlight all these through the video because it's going to get really redundant, and frankly there's not that many changes between the two versions. Typically it's only minor, either adding a bayonet or a scope or removing some stuff. So first up we have the Stanschutz Hellriegel 1915. So that's really hard to say. I'm not going to even attempt to pronounce that correctly. This is actually a really interesting gun. It's a belt-fed machine gun, and that kind of tube on the barrel is actually a water-cooled jacket. And then we do have the factory and the artillery version of these two weapons. So in Battlefield 1, this is going to be very interesting for the assault class. We don't really have any high ammo capacity machine guns or SMGs or assault rifles, whatever you want to dub them. We really only had like the MP18 that had a relatively low ammo capacity no matter which version you use. This is definitely going to create a different dynamic for that. I'm sure the damage on this weapon will be much lower, or the rate of fire will be lower, but I also assume they'll give you that belt-fed magazine, and that's going to be quite different than the options available currently. Next up, we do have the Winchester Model 1897. This is going to come in the Hunter, the Light Infantry, and the Assault forms. I'm actually really interested to see what the Hunter form means. I have a feeling that means it's going to fire a slug instead of buckshot. I have no idea, that's just speculation, but that'll be pretty interesting. This is the trench gun. I'm sure you guys have heard of that. It's been in a lot of other games. Not too much to explain about it. It's your standard shotgun, pump action, and again firing a shotgun shell, typically a buckshot, which is like a bunch of little pieces, compared to a slug, which is one solid round. Right after that, we do actually have another shotgun, and this one's going to be a little bit more interesting. The Browning Auto 5, coming in the Hunter, the Special, and the Light Infantry versions. This is actually a semi-automatic shotgun. You've probably seen this shotgun before, or even used it in different video games and haven't realized it. It's actually in Team Fortress 2, Red Dead Redemption, and even Medal of Honor. Just think you're pretty much stereotypical semi-automatic shotgun. It uses a recoil-operated system, so as you fire, it'll eject the last shell and load the next one. Nothing too crazy here. All these guns are pretty standard, a lot of shotguns, and then the regular guns we had in the beta. I don't think anything too different is going to be going on with the assault class. I just think it's going to be played a lot differently on some of the smaller maps. The map we had in the beta was really big and open and more of a sniper heaven. When the full game gets released and we have some more intimate and close quarters maps, I'm sure these shotguns will get a lot more use and the assault class will get a lot more use as a result. The meta class in Battlefield 1 was in a super weird spot. You couldn't really revive people, which, you know, that's the point of a meta class. We also know they're going to be getting a wrench in the final game, but I'm going to have a separate video on all the different gadgets that did come out of this leak. But as far as weapons, we did get two new weapons, the first of which being the Remington Model 8. This is going to come in the Factory, the Special, and the Sharpshooter variants. This is actually an interesting gun. The way the slide works on this is it actually starts at the side, but will go up toward the top of the gun. So your charging handle is normally on the right side of the gun. This one actually pulls back and goes to the top of the gun. I'm trying to help you visualize it. Kind of hard to explain. It's interesting to have the Sharpshooter option on this. It definitely seems like it's going to be some kind of sniper or just in general a longer range rifle for the meta class. I imagine it'll handle very similar to some of the other semi-automatic rifles in Battlefield 1. The primary difference being it'll have different damage or a different range. This one definitely seems like it'll have higher damage, lower rate of fire, but as a result a much farther range. So the second gun for the meta class is actually going to be the Winchester Model 1907. This is going to come in the Factory, Auto, and Trench variations. I think this gun's a little bit more interesting out of the two. It fires a 351 SL round. The SL just means self-loading, but the 351 round is very large. Think of a 357 Magnum. It's a very loud, powerful round that has a lot of stopping power. I have a feeling this is going to be the powerhouse of the meta class. It's basically going to be one of those guns that's probably going to have a lot of recoil, but do a ton of damage per shot. So if that's something you're into, definitely use this. I feel like that's something I was lacking as a primary medic player. All the guns felt like they took so many shots on target to actually take them down when I was using the options already available. I know a lot of other people didn't have that complaint, but this is definitely going to be one of those guns I'm probably going to look to use, as I do like doing a lot more damage. So the support class is probably the weakest class in the beta. I'll assume it was the least used class, and I imagine it's going to undergo quite a bit of changes before the final game. So what kind of weapons did we not see in the support class? Well, first and foremost, we have the Hoyt automatic rifle, coming with a low weight and an artillery variant. This gun's actually pretty interesting. It's basically taking a few other concepts and putting them into a singular gun. It uses the same cooling system as the Lewis gun and has the same rate of fire as the BAR. It has a 25 round mag, and honestly, there's not that much crazy about it. There's a lot of practical things in real world, like not needing to change its oil as often, and basically just being a very durable weapon. But as far as that's going to translate to Battlefield 1, I don't really know. It just seems kind of like all the other machine guns we've had so far, not really have anything crazy different. Obviously, that 25 round mag puts it in a very specific category. It has a slow rate of fire, so it doesn't go through the mag super fast, but fast enough to still be able to provide covering fire and just do machine-like things. All around, not that exciting. Let's move on to the next. The Bergmann MG15NA. So this is going to be the most traditional, at least by modern terms, machine gun in the list. It has a big 100 to 200 round belt-fed mag, and at least in history was always used with a bipod or a tripod. If you're seeking that kind of mounted MG feel, I think this is going to be what you want to use. It also does come in a low weight, a light infantry, and a suppressor variant. I'm hoping the suppressor means like it'll suppress, not be suppressed, aka not having a silencer. I really doubt they'll do that, but who knows. I'm sure it'll have something that'll basically make it so as you fire near and around enemies, the suppression effect will be much more than when just using a normal gun. All around, this is the gun I'm most excited for. I really like just laying down fire with some of the different MGs. I didn't really feel like you could do that in this game, especially with the way the mechanics were changed. So now as you fire for longer, your accuracy will increase. I think this is the gun that's going to be able to best demonstrate that system and can be very powerful if used correctly. So then last but not least, we have the BAR M1918. I'm sure you've seen this gun. It's been in a ton of different just stuff, video games, movies. It's even a very popular gun to just own as an individual. I think this will be very popular in Battlefield 1. Probably a lot of support players will go for this. It'll handle like a normal machine gun. Maybe think of a heavy assault rifle even. Like you're probably not going to mount this and sit in one location because it does only feature a 20 round magazine, although it does pack a pretty powerful punch. This will be more of a running gun type gun, which with the new changes to how support class is going to work, may be an interesting option that doesn't work that well. So I'm actually going to be really brief with the Scout class. They're going to have 3 new rifles, and more or less they're all bolt action rifles, so they're going to have some variation of range, damage, and rate of fire. It'll be some variation among those numbers that are going to yield what we see in the actual game. First and foremost, we have the Winchester Model 1895. This is going to come in the Rifleman, the Marksman, and the Trench variations. I think this is going to be one of the higher rate of fire weapons that probably does lower damage. It does have a lever action system, so you'll be able to cock it back and forth pretty quickly relative to some of the different bolt actions. Then we have the M1903 Springfield. This comes in the experimental, marksman, and sharpshooter variations. Another gun you've probably seen in quite a few other games, World War II and the like. One thing that's interesting about this though is the experimental variation. There was an experimental bullpup version of this gun, which would be pretty interesting to see in Battlefield 1. What a bullpup gun means is basically the magazine is loaded in the back of the gun behind the trigger. Think of the L85. The benefit of this is you can have a much longer barrel, which thus provides more accuracy and more range. If this was a bullpup, that means the magazine would be loaded in the back of the stock instead of in front of the trigger. I don't know if that's what we'll actually see, because some of the stuff I found on Google made that seem very silly and it didn't look that practical, although it was experimented with and it's the only experimental type I could find online. And then last but not least, we have the Gewehr M95. It's going to come in the Rifleman, the Carbine, and the Sharpshooter. Again, it's going to be relatively similar to some of the other bolt actions already in the game, probably doing more damage than some of those, but maybe having a shorter range. So now we actually have the pilot class. There's not much to say about this one. You're not typically supposed to be on the battlefield, and if you are, it's probably by some bad circumstance, unless you're just trying to make like a pilot class montage or get some kind of medal or something like that. Basically, there's going to be 2 new guns for this class outside of the C96 that we saw in the regular game, that being the Frommer Stop Auto Model 1912. So this is actually a little bit interesting. It's basically just a normal pistol. Think of your just normal semi-automatic pistol, but this is going to be a modified version of that to have a much longer barrel and of course be auto. It sounds super impractical. It doesn't have a full stock or anything, so it's basically a fully automatic pistol that you have to hold in your hand, which should mean it has very bad recoil, but I guess we'll see what happens in the final game. So this gun's actually really cool. The Pieper Revolving Carbine, or maybe it's the Piper, I don't know. Basically, imagine someone took a revolver. Instead of having 6 shots, they gave it 9 shots. They give it a bigger round that's going to fire about, well, it's a proprietary round, but it's around the 7.62, so think of an AK round, and then gave that revolver a stock and a really long barrel to shoot it really far. That's what you have here. I think this is really cool. I love these kind of mix match weapons like this, and it's actually pretty practical. It really though is just a revolver with a big stock, a bigger round, and a longer barrel to shoot that round. So last but not least, we have the various sidearms that we should see in the game. There's actually a lot on this list, 13, not including the 2 we saw in the regular game. So I'm not going to go through each and every one because at the end of the day, there's not much variations between them. They're either a semi-automatic pistol or a revolver. So I'm just going to highlight 2 of them that I found particularly interesting. First and foremost, the Roth Steer M1907. This is actually the first widespread use of a semi-automatic pistol for a major power, and that was Austria-Hungary. I don't know much about the pistol, but it's kind of weird. It's actually top-loaded, so it seems like the magazine, or I guess that's a magazine, is pretty similar to what you have in a normal magazine, except it just goes in the top instead of through the grip. Pretty interesting. Another one that I found really cool is the Howdah pistol. So this is actually like some kind of crazy, almost like a sawed-off shotgun or an old-school blunderbuss. It was actually made in the 1790s. It actually fires a lot of different rounds due to the nature of the gun. It's pretty versatile, but in particular, it fires a .577 Snider, which is a massive round. Think of the elephant gun and stuff like that. It's basically a 50 caliber round in the pistol size. Not exactly, but that's a good idea of how to picture this. And it really is just like a small little pistol sized double barrel shotgun, except firing a much larger round than the 12 gauge. That's gonna pretty much wrap it up for this video though, guys. If you are interested in any of these, I do have a link in the description down below to one of the users that did compile a list with all kinds of pictures and stuff like that. As I did mention, I'm going to be going over the gadgets probably in a video tomorrow or the day after. We're going to have the same format except for each class I'll talk about the different gadgets that were revealed. So if you're interested in that, I highly recommend subscribing. But with that, I thank you for watching again, and I hope to see you all next time. Later.